Hi, so today I'm going to talk about Lady Jane Grey, otherwise known as the Nine-Day Queen. Well, a bit of background: she was born in October 1537 and died in February 1554. She was just 17 when all this happened. She ruled for, like I said, just 9 days, never got officially crowned, and she was executed on the orders of Mary Tudor. So, yeah, that's a quick summary. Now I'm going to get into the background. Well, she was related to Henry VII. She was his great uh, great granddaughter, yeah, and she was very well educated. She was noble, obviously, and had access to a lot of education, good quality too. So she spoke Greek, Latin, Hebrew, Italian, French, and could actually write really well in Greek and Latin. So she was like a really well educated noble who was smart. She wasn't just. I mean, she was eventually just a pawn, but it's not like she was just manipulated without her knowing what she was doing. She kind of did, kind of. She did live in Catherine Parr's household when, like, by the end of Henry VIII's reign, she lived with Catherine Parr, and when Henry died, she continued living with Catherine Parr. Catherine Parr got married again to Thomas Seymour, and when Catherine died, instead of leaving Jane Grey to her own devices, she was made a ward to Thomas Seymour. There was this plan to. Thomas Seymour was obviously related to Edward the King because Jane Seymour was the king's mother. So they were related. So Thomas Seymour told Edward, hey, Edward Somerset, who was in charge of Edward, that hey, why don't we marry Lady Jane Grey and Edward? And there was this whole plan to actually do this. But Seymour got executed in 1549. So that whole plan got scrapped. That didn't happen. Then comes the whole issue of her marriage and her relationship with the nobles and how she did present herself as the natural successor to Edward. Well, in 1551, Jane Grey's father was made Duke of Suffolk. So now she had the support of a lot of nobles. She had the support of Northumberland, the Duke of Northumberland, who was Lord Protector, and the Duke of Suffolk, who was her father. So she was well placed in court, in the nobility. It's not like she was this just random noble who, yeah, had some claim but not any real connections. She did. She had Northumberland and Suffolk. Well, Duke of Northumberland said, hey, why don't I marry you to my son? Which she did marry his son, in 1553, son being Lord Guilford Dudley. Like Dudley, Jane Grey was an extreme Protestant. She advocated a lot of Protestant practices and supported Northumberland's extreme religious reforms as well as Edward's. Yeah, so she was well placed. She agreed with what the court was doing. So she was like the prime candidate as opposed to Mary, who was an extreme Catholic. So obviously, powerful men at court would think that Lady Jane Grey was a better candidate for the English throne than this Catholic. You know? So that's why Lady Jane Grey just got even more prominent in English politics. Like I said, she had a claim to the throne. She was related to Henry VII, so she was actually fifth in line. The first in line being Mary, the second being Elizabeth. Then I think it was Mary, Queen of Scots. There were like a bunch of other people, but she was fifth in line. So it's not like she had a distant connection to the throne. It was actually a really close one. That's why she posed such a huge threat to Mary. And one of the main reasons why she posed a threat to Mary was because Northumberland, who was a supporter of Lady Jane Grey, as protector, managed to convince Edward to exclude Mary and Elizabeth from the line of succession in favor of Lady Jane Grey and her sons and her male heirs. This would do two things: eliminate the threat of Mary and Elizabeth, which it didn't, but that's what they tried to do, as well as establish Jane Grey as her successor. But also, if Lady Jane Grey died, it would ensure that it wouldn't go immediately to Mary. It would go to Lady Jane Grey's heirs. So just establishing that line of succession just right at the beginning. This was done when Edward was on his deathbed, so kind of was manipulated by Northumberland to do this. And now comes the dark part. After Edward's death, he died on July 6th, 1553, and on July 10th, Lady Jane Grey was proclaimed Queen of England. She did faint when she got the news. Like, just one day you wake up and someone tells you, "Hey, you know how 4 days ago the king died? Well, you're now the new queen." And obviously she fainted. She was shocked. She was just 17. How do you handle that kind of pressure when you're just 17? Edward was younger, but Edward knew from the beginning he would be the King of England. He was the male heir. Lady Jane Grey, yeah, she kind of suspected it, but still, she didn't really expect it. She still went ahead. But, again, Mary was kind of excluded from the succession through Edward's will, but she had been made next heir through a parliamentary act in 1544 and through Henry VIII's will in 1547. So she could argue that because Edward was just a child, 15, when he died, he didn't have that much of an authority. I mean, he did, but he was king, obviously. But it was the Henry VIII's authority was bigger than Edward's due to the age. That's her whole line of argument. So when the second Lady Jane Grey was proclaimed queen, Mary started pushing for her own ascension to the throne, while Lady Jane Grey was just, "Help me, nobles, please." Well, on July 19th, the Duke of Suffolk, Mary's Lady Jane Grey's own father, so that the nobles just stopped supporting his daughter. I mean, she did have some support, but not nearly as much as she had when Edward was alive. So he just said, "Okay, fine, Mary, Queen of England." And that ends the short reign of Lady Jane Grey. But the story doesn't end there. Northumberland, the second this proclamation was made, lost all support, because if Mary, an extreme Catholic, was now queen, he, an extreme Protestant, would surely lose power, if not his head, which he did. So Suffolk told his daughter, Lady Jane Grey, "Hey, I just proclaimed Queen Mary Tudor is now going to be Queen of England. Could you please step down from the throne, because we don't want to get a lot of trouble, so please, can you, I know we want you to be queen and stuff, but let's just step down." So what Lady Jane Grey did, she abdicated her throne, but not really, because she was never really crowned. And when Suffolk, like I said, now supported Mary, all other nobles, the second Mary was proclaimed queen, started supporting her, and Jane Grey's abdication also lost her all the remaining support. Mary naturally sent Lady Jane Grey, her husband and her father, to the Tower of London. Of course, she couldn't just leave them going about. She had been queen for 9 days. It's not like she didn't pose a threat. She really did. So Mary wanted to keep them controlled. There was a trial. Lady Jane Grey and her husband were arraigned for high treason. Obviously, she was proclaimed queen, and that is treason to Mary, because Mary was the queen, and if someone else proclaimed herself as queen, that's not good. So they were charged with high treason. They both pleaded. I think Suffolk was Sappho was kind of let go because he was warned, but he did proclaim Mary as queen. So Mary's like, okay, fine, you're fine. I'm just going to execute your daughter and your son-in-law, but not you. Well, they both pleaded guilty and were sentenced to death in November 1553. But like I said, she only died in February 1554, and there's a reason for this. The execution was suspended for whatever reasons, so it was kind of like a breather, like, hey, we're not gonna be killed, thank God. That didn't last long. Suffolk, so White's Rebellion, a rebellion against the Spanish marriage between Mary and Philip of Spain, as an opportunity to try and overthrow Mary. So he participated in this, and of course Mary is like, I let you go. I suspend the execution for your daughter and son-in-law, and you try to overthrow me again? No. So he sentenced all three to death, sadly. And Lady Jane Grey was executed on February 12th, 1554. Apparently, her husband's body was, her husband was executed first, and his body was passed right beneath her window minutes before she was to be executed. And when she was going to be executed, she was apparently very brave. She knew what was coming. She had expected it for a while. Obviously, I don't think she wanted to die, but there was no way out, so better accept her fate. She actually told the executioner, please dispatch me quickly. Like, I know you're gonna kill me. Just end my suffering right here. I don't care anymore. Just please kill me now. She tied her own handkerchief around her eyes, and her last words were, Lord, into thy hands I commit my soul. Just, again, religious beliefs. She was executed, and her own father wasn't executed that day, but was executed 11 days earlier. And there ends the tale of Lady Jane Grey, the shortest reign in all of English history, even before. Just 9 days. Kind of sad. But, I mean, she was technically the first Queen of England, but the fact that she was never crowned makes Mary the first official Queen of England. Although, like I said, Lady Jane Grey was queen. She didn't do much in her 9 days because, what could she do? The first day was probably a shock. Second day was still like, what the hell is happening? Third day was like, oh my God, there's a threat from Mary. Fourth day, still that. Fifth day, still that. Seventh day, still that. And the 8th and the 9th day, the same. So she didn't do much. She never passed any acts. She didn't get the opportunity to call Parliament. I mean, she wasn't even crowned, so her reign is disputed as to whether it's valid or not. But it's like the most tragic reign ever. There was a female empress, like Empress Matilda, in the, I think it's the 11th century, but the first official queen would be Lady Jane Grey or Mary. Depends how you look at it. But yeah, that is pretty much it. So thank you for watching.